Hi, everybody. Hi, Danny.
Hello.
Thank you for being here and making the presentation today.
Yeah,
really cool.
Definitely happy to.
I really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, folks. Nice to meet you guys.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Yeah, Fatih actually invited me to this group a while ago. So I'm signed up online and all that, but I did not realize there was regular meetings until recently, so I haven't been attending.
I see, cool. And which company are you working for?
I work for Lumina Networks at the moment. In the past, I used to work for the Linux Foundation. So I've managed lots of different CI systems. So this kind of thing is kind of interesting for me because I want to know if there's easier ways to manage CI systems when you're using, you're not particularly using any specific one. So.
Cool. That's a perfect match for the SIG.
Yeah.
And you will talk today about Argo Rollouts, Danny.
Yep. Argo Rollouts today.
Cool. So do you still working from home, all of you?
Yeah, pretty
it's
much.
The same in Austria. It's the same in Austria, but it's okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of getting used to it. I think, yeah, I'll probably be work from home probably for a while too. So, but.
Fatih is also already here. I would like to introduce you to Danny. So Danny will give today the presentation on Argo.
Danny. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, of course.
So while we wait, maybe we can do the usual thing and start putting our names to the meeting document.
I start, yes.
Yeah.
Hi.
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 Hi, this is Max.
Hi, Max.
Hi.
Hi, Kara.
Hello.
So we can wait 1 or 2 more minutes while people start joining. And the agenda today, it looks full, but I think the first 3 topics will be hopefully be quick. And then we can have some conversation around these reusable libraries. If we have Chun and others here, Tracy will not be able to join. So that topic we may need to move to next meeting. And then we have Andreas, Emil, Ramin with us. Maybe we can talk about the workstream event-driven CI/CD. And then Max joined us today for the proposed work group SIG CI robots. So we can have conversation around that PR and the work group, followed by a presentation from Danny on Argo Rollouts. I think we will have around 30 minutes or perhaps some more for presentation and perhaps questions and answers followed by after the presentation.
That's perfect.
So yeah, if you haven't put your name there, it would be good if you can put your name, and we can slowly get rolling. And the first item is simply the action item review. I think we have 1 action item done already. So Andreas reach out to Argo folks, and we have Danny here, so we can close the action item. Thanks, Andreas.
Thanks, Danny, again for being here.
Yep, happy to be here.
And we have Chun. We don't have
Pete,
Chun.
can I ask for a favor?
Yeah.
Can you please put the HackMD link to what you're editing right now in the invite? It
Oh,
keeps
yeah.
in the invite. I always have to hunt for it. I don't know why.
Oh, yeah, I can ask Dan to update the invitation. I don't know if I have permission to update the calendar invite.
That's the only thing that I have linked back, and that link is always the Google Docs link, which
Okay.
is not valid.
Let me add an action on myself.
So the Google Docs inside has the HackMD link.
I'm looking at it and I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, I think I put the link on top of that Google Docs, the meetings docs. But yeah, I will get it fixed, Ramin. Sorry for.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then the link to this document plus the link to Zoom and the meeting time will be included in agenda mails and minute of meeting mails, because someone on the Slack, I forgot the name person, he couldn't locate the meeting logistics, so that will be included in the mails as well. But yeah, good point, Ramin. So Chun, to reach out Brandon from Drone Community. So Chun is not here yet. So we move Trace to invite Andy Bayer, Christy Wilson, and James Rawlings to discuss GoSCM. I see Christy, but you are probably not here to discuss GoSCM. Is that?
I'm here. I'm here to do whatever useful things I can, I guess. I mean, I don't have any. I can talk about GoSCM a little bit, but I don't really have any updates or any more info.
Okay, then
yeah.
There is a topic in the agenda. We can have a quick chat around that when it comes. Then. And then Spinnaker folks, Tracy is not here, so we don't know the status with it, so we keep them open. And the actual agenda item, the first agenda item, way forward with the SIG roadmap. So the reason why this point is in the agenda is that thanks to Tracy, we have the first draft available on Google Docs, and it's been there for 3 months, 2 months, maybe at least 2 months. I am wondering if it makes sense for us to kind of agree on that version and move it to our repository, and any further updates we may want to do with the roadmap could be done directly on the GitHub, and we can track updates in the version history as well. What do you think about the status of the roadmap? Does it look good, or should we continue keeping it as draft? So, no comments?
I'm still new here, so I've gone through the roadmap, but still trying to get my head around exactly what's going on. So no comments really just yet.
Okay, then we can park that topic for next meeting as well, to give everyone some more time and perhaps get more feedback, and then we discuss this again. So
I guess I can propose that you add it to an action item to everyone to review it more or less, or to comment. I guess we had some weeks ago, but again.
Yeah, that's good.
Because I currently don't know exactly what it says, so I can't really say much. I mean.
Okay. Yeah.
I propose that we decide on it next time then. Yeah.
Yeah. Topic. Okay, then we move to the next topic, and this is actually related to what is in the roadmap. You know, we discussed about these focus areas and the idea of creation of work streams based on the areas people may be interested in. And the two of the areas people shown interest during the previous meeting was reusable libraries, and the topic actually was brought up by Tracy and then Lawrence, specifically for GoSCM. But one of the ideas was to maybe wrap that under a more general topic, reusable libraries. And the other area we discussed was event-driven CI/CD or events in CI/CD, and it got a lot of interest as well. And the question we have now is, can we call these things work streams perhaps? And these two areas could be the initial areas we create work streams for, basically laying the groundwork for any other topics people might want to start a group to focus on and drive the topic without losing the details in SIG meetings. So should we have work streams or not?
I think it's a very good way to go about it. It allows people who have that specific interest to come together and do a deep dive in it. Then they can feed back to the SIG.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Christy, and so we'll say later on, I guess, we've already started one of these work streams, so I guess it's de facto there already.
Yeah, but that's you going as first will tell us if this is a good idea or not, depending on how, fast you come up with some, outcome or findings from this way of working. And I've seen Ramin gave thumbs up on Zoom. I don't know that existed, but. Anyone else?
That's perfect. So I'm also fine with it.
Okay, then relate that maybe this can be documented in the repo so people know what workstream means when they end up in looking at repository. Maybe we can create a simple document that describes this type of approach, saying that, okay, if people want to find like-minded people and focus on certain areas, they can reach out to SIG, present their case, and ask for others to join. And then we kind of make this, I don't want to call it official, but kind of official because it will be documented.
Would you like me to add that documentation to the repo?
Please. So you got yourself an action point, Cara.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay. And that was it for that topic. And the next topic is reusable libraries. And maybe Christy, again, I don't want to put you directly under this, but at the conversation we had last week, again, when we start talking about focus areas, Tracy brought up GoSCM as something perhaps could be housed within CDF, and there were some comments about, setting some boundaries, and GoSCM should it be under CDF or not, because it is very specific to Go itself. And then the conversation continued with having a focus on reusable libraries, and GoSCM could be underneath. So maybe you can talk about GoSCM, everyone knows what it is, and then we talk more.
Sure. Okay, so GoSCM is a library that tries to abstract SCM providers. I don't know how common it is to call these things SCM, but that's what some folks are calling them, like source code management. So this is things like GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket. The idea with GoSCM is that it's a Go library that lets you interact with all of those as if they're the same. So you could write the same, like you basically have like one abstracted common interface that lets you create a pull request, maybe generically, and that's something you could do with any of those. It gets a little bit rocky in that some of the concepts don't translate between all of the SCM providers. Like there are subtle differences between them. Like I think that not all of them support labels, for example. That might be a bad example, but there definitely are some things that you can do to some of them and can't do to all of them. But GoSCM is a library that tries to make it easy to interact with them, and Tecton has used GoSCM a bit we have some abstractions over interacting with a pull request, and we use that library. A bit of the history with it is that the GoSCM library was created by the folks at Drone, but then the folks working on Jenkins X ended up forking it because they wanted to make some changes to the way the library worked. And so now they maintain a fork in the Jenkins X org of GoSCM. So now there are two versions, at least, of this library. Tecton is using the version that was forked by the Jenkins X folks. And then a while ago, I'm trying to think of what the reason was for this. Oh yeah, I guess a while ago I started a discussion with some of the, I think at the beginning of this year, with some of the Jenkins X folks about like, did we want to try to upstream those changes? Did we want to try to, like even, I think at the time I was suggesting that maybe GoSCM be like a Tecton project or something, but then in the discussion, it became clear that it probably made more sense for it to be more neutral than that. So maybe like a CDF level project. And so I opened a thread, which I'll put a link to in the notes, with the drone folks to ask them if they were interested in that, but haven't heard back from them. So I can only assume that they are not interested or didn't see the message. And then I think like within Tecton, we haven't been doing much work that required it or required any changes to it. So it became like lower and lower priority. So as far as I know, the current state is that there's kind of this open thread with drone. I don't know if anyone involved is motivated enough to make something happen with this, but it does seem like it could be a cool, like if the goal of this group is to make it easier to use things together, and this is a library about making it easier to use these different SCM providers, it does seem like an interesting thing for this group to take on. I guess the worst case scenario though would be that we like make yet another fork of it, and then there are 3 forks. Yeah, anyways, that's all the info that I have about it.
I have a question, Tracy. Sorry, Christy, Emil here. You mentioned translation between these different SCMs, right? And I'm wondering, is there then some kind of shared or common vocabulary regarding SCM operations defined in that repository or in some tool documentation somewhere? Because I think that would be maybe a valuable input to our vocabulary document that we are writing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm not super familiar with the library myself, so I'm just like glancing through the notes right now. But definitely there is, because there is a common interface within the code that's used for all of them, and I think it contains things like pull request, labels, checks, and statuses, I believe. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That could be interesting, even to just extract that terminology from the project.
Okay, anyone else? Any questions, comments on this? I think this, like reusable libraries, I think that was kind of in one of the CDF documents and also in SIG documents. So again, if you don't talk about GoSCM specifically, this area seems to make sense for the SIG to investigate what libraries are out there and look for possibilities on at least highlighting them, perhaps not fixing everything, but just finding them out and sharing with the rest of the ecosystem.
Makes sense.
But then we keep this like topic open, and then we can revisit this if Chun can grab some folks from drone, because he had an action point, yeah, Brandon from drone community, and we can perhaps have a conversation with him as well in one of the upcoming meetings and hear their side of the story, what's happening with the library and so on.
Additionally, it may be interesting for us to have Andrew Baer do a presentation on Lighthouse, which is it will probably be spun out as its own individual project, but it is basically Jenkins X's rewrite of Prowl, and it is so that Jenkins X can be easily used with more SCM providers, and it must be using the Go SCM for sure. But I should have Andrew come and speak to us more about that, because it does enable a lot more, and it could be very interesting for this discussion specifically.
Okay, maybe, yeah, if you can get all these folks together and talk about this, that would be at least a contribution, you know, that's why we are here. And we have an action item on Tracy. Maybe Kara, can I add you as well as a co-owner of the action item, Andrew Baer? So get hold of him.
Oh, this is Andy. Oh, yes, I will definitely send Andrew. And yes, James. Good.
Yeah. and Christy. Hopefully Christy will be around during that meeting as well. And then also Brandon from Drone. Okay, if nothing else on this topic, we can perhaps talk about the other work stream, event-driven CI/CD. Emil, Andreas, Ramin, which one want to go?
Yeah, I can maybe start there. So I actually initiated this work stream after the last meeting we had by calling for a meeting. So we had actually a first round of meeting this Monday, Monday evening, European time, and Monday morning, of course, then Pacific time. And we were 4 people there, the 4 that are mentioned here, myself, Andreas, Ravi, and Ramin. And also Emily was there, Emily from Ericsson. And we kind of just chatted about what this work stream should be about. And after a short while, we came to some consensus that the initial name that was event-driven CI would make this work stream a bit restricted to what we wanted to discuss in the work stream or work on the work stream. So we actually renamed it as a first thing to events in CI/CD, which means that it can be used not only for driving things in CI/CD, but also for notifying other tools or external systems or whatever using events. So currently we will not restrict ourselves to any specific area when it comes to events, but anything related to events. We might of course restrict ourselves later on if we see that we can't really handle it all in this work stream, but we start off with a more generic heading of the work stream. Yeah, I think we had kind of a fruitful first meeting. We discussed a bit of terminology, for example, what an event is and what an event is not, and such things. And the outcome from this first meeting is actually stored right now in GitHub. There's a new folder for the work streams in the interoperability GitHub project, and I've added the minutes of meeting from our first meeting in there, so you can read it. And there is also a recording, but I'm afraid that that recording is still not possible to access if you're not an eBay employee, which quite few of us are. Right, I mean.
I actually no. I ended up saving it in my personal YouTube account. So
okay.
Yeah, that it is now. It's an unlisted. It's an unlisted link, meaning anyone can access it. It's just you need the link to be able to access it. But I would like to ask this forum as to where should we place these. Where should we place these things? Anything having to do with SIG interoperability, where should I upload it to?
Maybe we can ask Jackie and Dan to see if they can put these like meeting recordings you have, this one and upcoming ones, to CDF YouTube channel if it makes sense, and include it under SIG interoperability playlist perhaps, if it makes sense.
Yeah, that's anywhere other than my personal YouTube account would be good.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if we have Jackie or Dan with us today. No, I don't see.
Just a comment from me there. I'm not sure really how valuable this is to publish broadly on that YouTube channel. I'm just afraid that we pollute the channel with a lot of detailed discussions which might not be interesting to look at. Of course, if there were like presentations or I don't know, maybe grounds for some decisions or something that we would need to record, of course that could be something that would be valuable to have there, but I'm not sure that all our discussions are really valuable to have there. But at the same time, I don't have a competing proposal where to put it, so I guess it's better than nowhere. I know Andreas, you also commented that. I don't know if you have any other ideas.
I don't have an idea where to put it, but I completely agree. I don't think that each and every working meeting has to be on YouTube. So nobody will look these videos. Instead, we will pollute our channel.
I don't know if it would work for this group or if it's any better, but for the Tecton working groups, it's kind of annoying because you have to upload the file and it's not quite the nice interface that YouTube is, but we upload all the recordings to a shared drive that everybody in the community has access to. So it's not on YouTube, but you can access the recordings. I do think it's valuable to make recordings available for folks who can't attend at the time when things are, but I see what you're saying about YouTube.
So since you're on Google, I guess you can provide such a drive for us, huh? Or is there already a drive for the CDF?
I think anyone can make one. I don't know exactly how it works. Like for Tecton, we have like a community drive, and then we just share it with like a Google group. I don't know if you can make it accessible to everyone. So that is one barrier, that you have to be part of the Google group. But I think anybody can make a shared drive. I don't actually know.
Is it kind of restricted in storage somehow in size, or? I guess it is.
That's a good question. I can try to find some information and put a link.
So yeah, it would be. I think free accounts have some limitations. I don't know exactly what it is, and with video files, it would pretty soon fill up. But I mean, if it's anywhere, maybe just sticking with YouTube might be a good idea from an accessibility perspective, so that it just gets more accessible for new folks to get a handle of these meetings and the recordings, which otherwise would be slightly hard to find through the docs. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, it's definitely.
What about having a
is harder
second YouTube channel for archives? That way, there can be decisions made on what to pollute the main channel with versus the second channel.
Yeah.
Or maybe we can ask Dan and Jackie for guidance. Maybe they already thought about these things, and then we can take this topic more generally, like what to do with like non-meeting type of recordings, and see what happens. Until that happens, then the recording could stay where it is now, unfortunately, Ramin. But yeah.
The quick question: where are the TOC meeting recordings stored? Ideally, it should be all in the same place, right?
Yeah, the meeting recordings are on YouTube in CDF channel in SIG Interoperability playlist. Like you get all of them there. But yeah, let's park this discussion because we are coming closer to the presentation, and then work stream needs to figure this out. Like there are two ideas, like should we record all the meetings and share them, or should not? In parallel that we can talk to CDF people, Dan and Jackie, and get their guidance, and then we decide what to do, or leave it to work streams if there is a possibility to put them on YouTube.
Yeah, sorry for putting us in this direction to discuss that too long, but about the work stream that we have, I mean, yeah, we had quite a few discussions there, and I think it was a very good startup meeting. I don't know if anyone else of you, Andreas or Ramin, want to fill in anything from that meeting, or?
I have nothing to add, so that's perfect.
Same here.
I guess we should have some kind of regular feedback to this group from that meeting somehow. If we should have, I don't know, status reporting every now and then from the work streams, without taking the whole meeting, of course.
Sure. Let's present our results as soon as we have some.
Right. Good idea.
Okay. Thanks, Emilia, Andreas, and Ramin. It's great that this started, and looking forward to your updates.
And just a final comment, anyone that is interested, of course, join. It's open for anyone. So if you didn't join the first time but want to join, please don't hesitate next time. Thanks.
I put the link to a meeting, the document HackMD, and I think the Zoom link is there. So an invitation, you can reach out to Emil, Andreas, and Ramin for the invitation. So sorry, we need to move on. Max, you with us?
Yep. Hey.
Yeah, please go ahead.
All right. So basically, I gave already a short introduction on the talk meeting, I think nearly a month ago, about a small proposal, which you can also find there on the link given. Not sure how to call it, but maybe I can try to outline the topic again a little bit. So from a background, I'm actually working with tons of different companies together, implementing actually cloud native platforms like Kubernetes, and support them also with deploying applications on top of it. And what I've observed in the past years is basically that all of these companies try to leverage their CI/CD pipelines. So besides the fact that they're switching around tools all the time, they try to implement scripts or sometimes robots which support in the work of or with the CI/CD. So what could this be? There's stuff like just random labeling. So basically, for example, stop the active testing of an CI/CD, for example, just because that a previous test before failed and should not go on with it, or something is not certificate didn't signed, and some stuff like this. But this can be also like with, for example, the robot framework, which is actually testing framework. So it's something which basically is a CI/CD testing framework, which runs in parallel and gives feedback. So it's always a spin-off, needs to hold or stop the current pipeline, do its testing, and this can be massively. We have seen some of the clients where this testing takes half a day or a day until there's coming some feedback. But of course, there's also some more human interaction frameworks like the bot cube, which is basically, yeah, you could summarize it under chat ops, for example. So all these tools are always integrate with the CI/CD pipelines, but the main purpose of them is more to, I would say, do the human interaction more easier on the one side, or to trigger, first of all, other processes, which does not run necessarily anymore in the CI/CD pipeline. So after the first discussion, I try to rephrase and add some little bit more context to it, because I think could be quite feasible to dig deep into it and find their common naming first of it, and find tools for different problems, basically, and how they can integrate, and if there's a possibility to maybe in some way to harmonize it. So basically to find a way how all of these tools can be exchanged, can be really easily integrated, because this is also something we would have quite frequently see. We had shell scripts, self-written small applications, which needs to be adjusted with every time a pipeline get updated and stuff like this. And yeah, basically that's all about this.
Thanks, Max. Anyone has any comments, questions?
I think maybe partially it could fit also to the events in the CI/CD, because events are on the one thing a way of how you can get some information in a standard way out, but event driven means that you can have bidirectional communication with a standard format. And I think in the end, if you want to integrate such tools, even with JetOps or labeling or different testing frameworks, do this event driven would actually allow to be more exchangeable on this place.
So I completely get your idea, but maybe this would require a little bit longer discussion, and maybe really the event-driven workstream which we already have, would be a great place to start this discussion. So if you would like to join us, I see
Yeah,
potential
for sure.
So that your topics could fit into this topic area.
Yeah, for sure. When you give a short summary of what you have discussed recently, we was not aware of that there's an events and CI/CD working group already. But I think it would actually fit quite well, because I think, yeah, as said, it would be the right interface in the end, I believe, to think and design everything what's going into this direction.
So then I would like to invite you to one of our next meetings. I will send you all the details, and then let's have discussion on this.
Sure, sounds great.
Cool.
I want to highlight something. Thank you, Andreas, for comment. But the proposal Max have there is actually to the talk. So, and I don't think in CDF we have any power to work under this SIG or in this work stream. So it's like Max is just here he is being nice and talking about this. So again, if you have comments, maybe you can put under the pull request. So talk people can also see the conversation, and they can perhaps they take this as an input to further discussion under talk when it comes to if this SIG or work group should be created or not. And it's good that if Max can join to events in CI/CD workstream as well, but we can't decide it should be under this SIG or under that workstream. Just as a note.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. Just Andreas, if you don't mind, if you can put a comment under the PR suggesting this, so then Laurent can also see and others can see the conversation, and then Max takes it from there and discusses with talk further, maybe comes under this SIG or that work stream, or goes with the new work stream or SIG.
Sure, I will do.
Okay, thanks, Andreas,
cool.
Max.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. If there is no other question about this proposal, I want to give the stage to Danny for Argo.
Great. All right,
Okay.
I'll
stop sharing.
Take over the screen.
Yeah, try please.
Yeah, let's see if we can get this working. So can everyone see my screen?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. And if I click present, everyone can still see my screen?
Yeah.
Perfect. So hi, everyone. My name is Danny Thompson. I'm a software engineer at Intuit, and I work on Argo Rollouts, a progressive delivery tool on Kubernetes. And I'm going to kind of give a brief overview of it today with a quick demo. But before I dive in, I kind of want to help set the stage a little bit and kind of explain some background about Intuit. So Intuit has made a significant investment into Kubernetes internally. So we have an internal platform that we offer to our developers so that they can deploy their applications onto various Kubernetes clusters, while our central platform team kind of manages and upgrades those clusters for them. And so along the way, we now have over 1,200 developers using this platform. And since Intuit's kind of a 30-year-old company, we kind of have a wide variety of kind of different services. So we have some larger, more monolithic applications. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have some really focused microservices. And so as a result, with this many different developers kind of developing on top of our platform, we've kind of gotten a lot of different use cases that we need to solve for their deployment needs. And so most of Intuit uses the deployment object for managing their Kubernetes, or at least managing their pods on top of Kubernetes. But we kind of run into some problems with the deployment object, the native deployment object. So if users want to do anything like blue-green or canary, they're kind of hosed because they have to orchestrate it themselves. And even then, the rolling update strategy kind of doesn't provide a lot of flexibility in terms of how you kind of do that rollout. Like it doesn't give you a lot of options to say how fast you want to roll out, nor does it kind of give you any functionality to say stop this rollout if X, Y, or Z is happening. And like in theory, you could do some of this with readiness probes, but also at the same time, that's not a good fit of kind of for readiness probes, not really what readiness probes are built for. And so kind of with all of this, we realized that we weren't happy with the native deployment object. And so from there, we said, okay, well, if we wanted to change this, what would it look like? Well, here is kind of the long list of use cases that we were trying to solve for. But the couple ones I want to highlight are adding these more advanced strategies like blue-green canary, having the ability to kind of abort a rollout based off of some failed metric, and being able to kind of fine-tune those metrics to really have a good representation of is your application in a healthy or unhealthy state, and really giving these metrics, or at least allowing our users to define their own metrics that they find useful for their application. And so with that, we came up with Argo Rollouts. So kind of the first phase of Argo Rollouts is, we kind of call it like deployment plus. It serves as a drop-in replacement for the deployment object. And instead of using the rolling update strategy, we add two new strategies, one being blue-green and the other being canary. And as big practitioners of GitOps, we really wanted to make sure that this rollout object was declarative and GitOps friendly, which also made it a lot easier to integrate it into our other Argo project, Argo CD. So, okay, this is still pretty high level at this point. Why don't I show you what a deployment looks like? So, or sorry, a rollout looks like. And so here's a rollout object. The rollout controller is responsible for basically taking an existing rollout and creating, scaling, and deleting replica sets based off of that rollout object. So similar to a deployment object, we have a spec. So the spec is mostly identical to the deployment. So you can see there's the pod template spec. You can specify a number of replicas, and we also kind of left some other fields out for brevity. But that very much is a easy transition for any users who were using a deployment to a rollout. This side of the spec is going to be the same. Now, what users can do with a rollout that they can't do with the deployment is they can specify a strategy. And so this new strategy, or at least these new strategies, allow you to provide control over how you want to migrate from the old version to the new. So in the example I listed here, this is using the canary strategy where first, okay, we want to set a wait of 40%, then we want to wait an hour, then we set the wait, and when I say set the wait, I mean direct 60% of traffic to the new version or the canary and have 40 go to the old. But we'll basically execute each of these steps to kind of transition from the stable version to the new version that's specified in your rollout spec. So with that, this actually got us decently far. We were able to onboard a number of applications just with the blue-green and canary strategy alone, but we kind of realized we were missing some things. It didn't feel complete. And so that's where kind of the second phase of rollouts comes in, and that's more focused on progressive delivery. And so progressive delivery, you could think of it as kind of a continuation of continuous delivery, but focusing more on having the correct metrics to kind of validate that your new version is running in a healthy state, and also being able to kind of limit the scope of your new deployment. So be able to limit the number of customers who are seeing that new version so that you can kind of de-risk, or at least attempt to lower the risk of deploying a new version. And so within that, we created analysis and experimentation. For today, I'm just going to talk to analysis just for the sake of time. But what is analysis then? We envision the analysis as a new CRD that helps bring observability to the delivery process. It basically allows our users to specify, okay, here are a list of metrics that we care about. These are the values that we would consider healthy, unhealthy, or kind of inconclusive. So we'll need to kind of have some manual judgment. And based off of these metrics, we can either tell our rollout to continue rolling forward when it's successful, roll back when it fails, and kind of pause and wait for user intervention for inconclusive. And so that we integrate this analysis CRD with the rollout. So in the Canary strategy, for example, here we specify an analysis section, and we specify like an analysis template that we want to use. So I'll kind of dive into the analysis template in a bit, but what you need to know is that when this analysis is being launched, in this case, it's basically checking the threshold, checking the percentage of successful HTTP calls to our rollout. And so if in that case, the number, that value is over 90%, we're considered healthy and good to go. And this analysis will kind of run alongside these steps that we have listed. And so we're able to basically have this analysis running and kind of stop at any point if we realize that our HTTP successful calls drops below 90%. So I know I kind of went through that pretty quickly, but why don't I do a demo, since I think demos always help visualize these things. So from here, I want to briefly pull up my terminal. And so let me know if you can't read this. But within Rollouts, we built a kubectl plugin that allows us to basically add additional functionality for rollouts to kubectl. And so when I run this, that was a get command that basically gets the rollout that is in the cluster and then kind of provides a bunch of information on it. So up top, there's a bunch of metadata. You can see it's the Canary strategy. It's executed all the steps. Here's the image it's running. And then below here, we have the kind of a visual representation of the rollout. So you can see here, we created a rollout. It's healthy. That rollout created a replica set, which is healthy. And then it also created an analysis run, which I will get back to in a minute. But why don't I show you our UI? So that rollout we're running, basically, this is the front, the UI of that rollout. So basically, whenever with this page, whenever one of these floating dots goes across the screen, that represents a request to the backend. And that backend basically returns a color. So in this case, it's returning all blue. And so if I refresh the screen, you can see I also have this bar on the bottom. That bar is a representation of the percentage of requests for that color. So right now we have 100% blue. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the command line and I'm going to run a command to set the image from blue to green. And so this is just kind of a convenience function around kind of updating the image. So you can see we now brought up a new canary image green. And as a result, we see that the rollout starts progressing to the new version. So the first step that we saw in the slides was that first it sets its weight to 40%. And so you can see here, now in order to reach 40%, we scaled up 2 new pods for the new replica set and then scaled down 2 from the old to reach a ratio of 40%. And you can see in the CUI now we have kind of a split. So right now about 40% is being split between the, or 40% is being sent to the green while 60 is still going to the blue. With that being said, one other thing I want to point out is that we have this analysis running here. And so that this is that check that I was talking about that's confirming that, okay, the percentage of the healthy percentage of HTTP calls to the backend is above 90%. And so one thing we can do with our UI is we can modulate the error rate. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make the blue return a 500 error, or at least return error 77% of the time. And so you can see these darker blue dots represent requests that are basically return a 500. And so now if we go back to our terminal, you can see that, hey, we had a fail with our analysis run. And so then the rollout realized, hey, this is a failed deployment. So I'm going to scale down the 2 pods that we brought up. And so then it also scaled up the old replica set. And so you can see now we're back at 100% blue traffic. And so I'm going to reset that error rate back down to 0, just so that I can retry the deployment, or sorry, the rollout, and then kind of we can have it progress all the way. So now I'm going to run another helper command just to retry the rollout. So again, it's creating those 2 replica sets, and it launches a new analysis run. And now that new analysis run is going to check to see that we have a, basically that metric is above 90% successful calls. And so the way we set up this rollout is that this first step, or at least the step we're on, is we're at an infinite pause just for demo reasons, so that I don't have to try to race the clock. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run a promote command that basically says, okay, I'm done with this wait. And so you can see now it's starting to try to get to a wait of 60%. It's going to wait about 10 seconds. And once it waits 10 seconds, it'll go up to 80, wait another 10, and then fully roll out to the new version. All the while, this analysis run is still running in the background. Yet, as soon as we finish this deployment, or at least finish progressing to this new version, this analysis run will finish, because we only run this analysis during the kind of transition to a new version. So you can see now the replica set, the old replica set was completely scaled down. The new replica set has all 5 pods. And when we go back, we have a fully green rollout. So that's just a brief overview, or a brief demo of Argo Rollouts, just to kind of help quickly explain some of that magic. And I'm going to try to fly through it a bit just so we can have time for questions. So this is an analysis template. The analysis template basically allows you to define one or more metrics that you want to monitor. One of the things we really tried to do with the analysis template was try to make it support multiple providers. So right now we support things like Prometheus, being able to run a Kubernetes job, just a raw webhook provider that can just query a web endpoint, and another metric tool called Wavefront. And so with that, so you can see within this Prometheus provider, we're providing a PromQL query and an address. And so that's the analysis run is going to basically query Prometheus for this information. Then it's going to compare it to this success condition, and you can kind of define different success conditions using a, we use this library that we found that allows you to kind of write more complex expressions to basically evaluate the results. So for example, if your provider returns an array, you can use kind of these built-in functions like any, all, filter. With that, also have an interval. And the last thing I'll kind of touch to before we move to Q&A is we want these analysis templates to be parameterizable. This allows us to basically kind of create templates that can be shared across organizations and communities. And we kind of see these templates as a way to kind of create make it easier for users just to kind of pick and choose the templates they want to use and kind of pick and choose the different metrics while making it easy for them to kind of adopt them. So with that, that is my overview of Argo Rollouts. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Maybe you answered this already. How is this different from the already the Kubernetes deployment strategies like Blue Green and Canary and A/B testing and things like that?
So the deployment object doesn't provide any strategies for Canary or Blue Green, or even A/B testing. The deployment object only offers the rolling update strategy and the recreate strategy. That being said, I think the Canary strategy that I just showcased, it is very similar to the rolling update. The difference, I would say, is that the Canary strategy that I showed you gives you more fine-grained control about how you want to go from version 1 to 2. You can say, okay, I want to create one pod, wait like a day even, then I want to increase the traffic, versus with the deployment object, that'd be very hard to automate.
I see. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I would also have a few questions. So my first question is, you mentioned that Argo Rollouts is GitOps friendly. Does this also mean that you can persist the state of the Canary in the Git repository? So for example, currently it's 40% rolled out, or as far as I know, you only have this in the state of the Argo Rollout resource, but it's not written into the Git repository, right?
Yeah. So what we store in the Git repo would be, one, the analysis, or at least the rollout object that basically defines your kind of the set of pods you want to create. And then we'd also store the analysis template in the Git repository, which is basically the blueprint you want to use to run analysis. And so when the rollout is transitioning to a new version, it will take that template and create what we call an analysis run from that template. And so we use that template as kind of like the blueprint that we want to store in Git while we see the analysis run as the kind of like an instantiation of it.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And second, you can pause the rollout for some duration. Do you also plan to not use a duration, instead, for example, use number of users which have accessed a website, which is much better, because let's imagine you are doing the canary during the night. Of course, you don't have that much users, and you probably won't run into an error. And so the canary completes successfully, and therefore the duration sometimes is not really the best metric here, I would say.
Yeah, no, definitely, I agree. Duration is a bit of a kind of a blunt tool. I think what you could do there is you could probably create an analysis template that basically queries that Prometheus backend to say, okay, how many users have you had?
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, if it's below a threshold, don't return successful, but also don't return a failure. And then you could have another metric that within the analysis template that says, okay, what's the percentage of healthy calls?
I see.
And one thing I didn't mention during that overview is, so you know how I specified the analysis kind of in parallel to the steps? You could have a analysis step that basically says, okay, run this analysis after you set a weight of, let's say, 10%. And once you can't proceed to the next step until the analysis completes successfully. So that's how I would achieve that.
Perfect. I would have one last question. So how do you identify the new version inside your monitoring solution? So you have the blue version and the green version next to each other. How you identify this inside your monitoring solution?
Yeah, so one thing that deployments do that we kind of took from the deployments is that when deployments create a replica set, they inject a label called pod template hash. That pod template hash is generated from the hash of the spec.template within the deployment. And so when you look at a replica set, for example, you see it's like usually deployment name dash hash. That hash is the hash of the spec.template. So that's also, we copied that behavior from the deployment. So all of the pods have a unique hash associated with it. And so that's how we basically identify the differences between the versions.
But by only looking at the hash, you don't know which one is the new version, right?
From there, we can also specify in the rollout, like add this hash as an argument to the analysis template. So like in the analysis template, you would have an argument saying pod template hash. Then within the rollout, we have a feature of saying, okay, when you create this analysis run, inject this argument, and we want you to inject the new pod template hash. And so that's how we would identify the new version.
That's nice. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
If we have, sorry.
Sorry. That's
Go
okay.
ahead.
I'll catch up with you probably offline, Danny.
Okay. Yeah, sounds great.
Okay. So thank you for the presentation. I was wondering what drove you to develop Argo Rollouts? Because I know Flagger, for instance, was already in place at the time of developing Argo Rollouts. And I was just wondering if it's just the better integration with Argo CD, for instance, that drove you to develop it in the first place, or what was it that you wanted to do with it?
Yeah, so I'd say there's two things. One, at the time when Argo Rollouts started, like I think it only started maybe a couple months after Flagger. So part of it was, one, we didn't really see Flagger at the time. And then two, we started off more trying to solve the blue-green use case, since that was kind of the initial problem statement that we were trying to kind of solve some of our problems within Intuit. But I think kind of between Flagger and Argo Rollouts, they both kind of take they are solving very similar problems, but kind of take different approaches, where Flagger kind of takes more of an approach of copying their deployment over and running 2 copies, while Argo Rollouts kind of just takes over the deployment project or object. And so I think both of them have pros and cons to their approaches, but for us, we found that it was kind of easier for our developers to kind of conceptually understand, because they're still modifying the same, almost the same object, except instead of it being a deployment, it's a rollout with 1 extra field.
Right. Okay. Thank you. We are actually trying it out. Yeah. I just wondered about the explanation. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you guys have any other questions about Argo Rollouts, feel free to either join the Argo Prod Slack channel, or I just joined the CD Foundation Slack channel, so you can reach me there too.
Perfect.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you
Thanks
for being
a lot,
here.
Danny.
Yeah, definitely happy to.
Thank you.
So we give action point to everyone who joins to our meeting. Can you upload the slides you have shown to CDF presentations repository? Let me try to put that link to chat so people can fetch the slides to look at for offline, and perhaps you can include the links to Argo project, mail list or whatever options you have there, so people can join into those as well. So let me put that there. And I think we are 5 minutes over time. If there is no other question, we can close this week's meeting. Again, thank you, Danny, for joining. Thank you, Andreas, for fixing the meeting and bringing Danny to meeting. And our next meeting will be on June 25th. And then you will see the agenda on the mail list. Thank you for joining today. Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Right. Thanks.
Bye.